Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. My name is Invin. Today I wanted to bring you guys a video on my top 5 tips and tricks for the territory wars in New World. Now there's quite a lot of stuff going on in these wars, and basically what we're going to be taking into account here is that they've fixed everything for full launch, so we've got a perfectly smooth war experience. We're not encountering any lag. It's all just going to be completely smooth and streamlined, which is what we want, and hopefully what we're going to be presented to by Amazon Game Studios when we do have the official launch on September 28th. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail here on 5 of these tips. These are kind of like my top 5. Obviously, I'm reserving a couple of my speciality tips for my company to try out first, but as soon as the game launches and we do try those ones out, I'll bring you guys gameplay with a little overview of what's going on there for those ones as well. So jumping into it here, the first one is to have a clear plan / strategy. When you are on defense side, you want to split your groups, so you want to have 3 groups on each flag, with 1 group roaming and going against siege guns. Maybe you want to put 2-2-2 with 2 roaming groups and 2 then pushing for siege weapons. It's entirely up to you how you want to strategize it in terms of splitting, but you do kind of want to split your teams and then have people rotate. You also want to have 1 group that stays on 1 flag. So for example, we usually do Group 1 stays on flag A, Group 2 stays on flag B, and Group 3 stays on flag C, regardless of where the enemies are pushing, until those flags are lost. Now, if those flags do become lost, obviously they just rotate to another flag, and then we have every other group assigned to a flag, except from maybe those flanking groups, like I said there, but then they just flexibly rotate to wherever the enemies are pushing currently at. Now, this is a really good strategy, and it's one that works for me, so hopefully it will help you guys out. Conversely, if you are attacking, we usually do 2 teams or 2 groups, so Group 1 and 2 will attack flag A, Group 3 and 4 would attack flag B, and the other 6 groups would all go to flag C and try and focus that one out. Now, at which point one of the other groups from the other flags may be able to either win a battle where there's a smaller number of defenders against them, or they can call up most of the people have rotated, and we can quickly capture A or B if they've rotated away from that one. Usually the C and A rotation is a lot longer, so if most people rotate off A, there's only a couple of groups defending, and we then send 5 or 6 groups straight over to A when they respawn, or just straight from the flag on C. We generally cap that pretty quick, so that it brings it down to 2, and then you're playing 50-50 bets, and it kind of just is a kind of a way of chipping at the enemy, which is really, really useful. Now, one really, really important thing here is when you are attacking or defending, as soon as your team get to the flag, have as many people as possible stood on that capture zone. If you're defending, it will stop the enemy team from attacking it and capturing it unless they have more people in there than you. And if you're attacking, it's going to mean it's going to go down as quick as possible, and you're going to get as much progress before the enemy either fights back or rotates. And sometimes, like I said there, you can actually get a full capture on a point before the rotate actually happens from the enemies, which is really cheeky, and it does get you ahead in the fight, which is a really good moral boost for your team. Now, whichever side, again, you are on, either attacking or defending, it's going to be absolutely essential to make sure that you've balanced out your roster very nicely, and you want to have at least 8 to 10 healers and at least 8 to 10 full tanks in the squad, which means that roughly about a third of your squad should be tanks and healers only. So these people are not really going to do any damage, but they're going to be the bread and butter of every single war that you do. You need people who can take the damage and who can just push people back, create a lot of CC, a lot of crowd control. It's going to be really, really vital in wars. And another thing that's going to be really, really vital, obviously, is your heals. The big AoE heals are going to be what your healers need to spec into for this, and they're going to need to be positioned on each point so that you've constantly got heals on each of your members, even if it's a DPS tank hybrid or generally just DPS members. Having a healer there can keep them alive as long as a tank, which can really turn the weight of battle. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you've got as many healers as you can in your squad, but don't overdo it because you do need a decent amount of damage as well, so don't forget to balance those ones out. So tip number 2 here is going to be fairly self-explanatory, but some people do not do this in wars, and it's going to be taking advantage of the siege weaponry. Whether you are on attacking or a defensive side, the siege weaponry is very, very useful, and it's going to get you a lot of damage and a lot of kills and put your team in a huge advantage if you do take advantage of using these weapons. Now, obviously on the castle walls, if you're the defending team, you have some ballistas and some crossbows, as well as you have like the oil pots and things like that. And if you're on the attacking team, you can buy these from the camp as well, and you can bring these out into the field to attack the gates or just to attack players on the floor when you are attacking those points initially. And this is really, really useful because it can be some really good support for those tanks and those healers. If you've got your DPS casters at the back and one of your melee guys jumps on one of these, they can do a ton of range damage and then go ahead and speed reloading when it's run out of ammo, and every time someone respawns, if they buy ammo and go back into the fight there, you can really keep rotating these out and get a ton of damage and get the enemy respawn timers up massively really early on, which is really, really helpful. Again, whichever team you're on, defense or attack, you're also going to want to have a couple of flank squads. I usually do groups 9 and 10 for this job myself, and generally those people are going to be the ones who are going behind enemy lines, attacking the people on the siege turrets, and actually attacking the siege weaponry itself, because destroying it is going to be very, very pivotal. As long as you get the players off it, it can't do any damage, but until you've actually destroyed the thing itself, people can re-jump on it with more ammo and continue to attack your team. So you're definitely going to want at least one squad doing this. Like I said, I prefer to have 2 squads doing it in my wars. Get people behind enemy lines, attacking these guys that are on it, so you get a kill there for free, and hopefully you stop people using it while they attack you in that area. And then if you're lucky enough to break through the ranks there long enough without getting contested to attack those siege weaponry, you can get some of those off the field, and that's going to be a vital thing to keep you in the war for a lot longer. Now, the third tip here is going to be having clear communication. Make sure that you've got a leader, so whether you're the leader of the company itself, whether you're the war leader, whether you are one of the consuls, or just the PvP lead guy, you need to make sure that everybody is following the strategy that you have set out, whether they're in your company or not. Now, obviously, this is much more useful if they are in the company, because generally everyone uses things like Discord, so you can have everybody join a call, play together, and it's going to be a lot more of a smooth line experience, and generally that's my preferred method for wars. We also have a channel for getting in any allies that join us, whether they're from our faction or the third party faction. We have a channel there where everybody hops in for the wars, and those guys can join in as well. So generally we try and get as many people in there as possible, but obviously sometimes that isn't possible. Sometimes people can't join voice comms, so just make sure that everybody isn't spamming the war channel in chat in game. Just make sure that it's exclusively for the shot callers. Usually you have the lead, so you'll have the person who is taking charge of the strategy in the war, and then you'll have 4 or 5 other shot callers in who are like your experts in PvP, and those guys are going to call rotations, call where enemies are moving to, and keep you aware of things at all times in the chat, so that everybody knows what's going on during that war. And that's going to be really, really important, because if everybody starts shot calling, everybody's talking in voice comms, everybody's spamming the chat, then things get a little bit too chaotic, lots of stuff going on, and nobody really knows where the organization is. So keeping yourselves with clear and concise communication, a good strategy paired with the first tip there, is really going to help you get a lot of things done in the war very successfully, as opposed to just running around like headless chickens. So definitely have as best communication as you can, and obviously as a company, as you go on through the game and you've done more and more wars, you'll understand what your company's strategy is, or the few that you use, and how you can utilize these to the best of your abilities. So tip number 4 is going to focus on when you've actually got to the fort stage, and again this is going to be for both defense and attack, so you're going to have a couple of different perspectives here. But if you are attacking, you're going to want to make sure that you actually damage and destroy all of the gates that are on the fort. And this means that you can attack from 3 different angles once all of those are destroyed, as well as the little passageways up the back, which I will get onto in just a moment. Now, this is going to be pivotal, because it means the enemy has to defend all of the gateways instead of you all flooding through one. Although the strategy generally is to attack and break through all 3 of the doors, have one team go through each of the side doors, or the middle door and a side door, and then have the entire rest of the company that's in that war fling in through one door there. You want to send a party ahead to trigger all of the traps, so they're going to be a couple of tanky guys with some healers following them in, and they're going to trigger all of the traps in that area, and then you're all going to pile onto the flag as quick as possible. And it's a really good strategy to get into the fort there as well. Now, if you are attacking, you're going to want to send a couple of sneaky groups around the back who are going to attack the rangers, the healers, and the casters, because they're going to be stood back on the walls attacking all of your melee guys and all of your tanks that are pushing it onto the point, as well as attacking your healers. So if you send in a few guys around the back that are really high damage DPS single target guys, they're going to be able to take a few of those healers out and get you a great push successfully onto the point without getting obstructed too much, which is really, really helpful. Now, if you're on the defense side, you're going to want to make sure you're using the most of those siege weapons, get a lot of that oil put down so that it prevents people from coming in, and when they do breach the doors, remember to use your inferno traps, so you've got the fire traps down there, they're doing damage to the enemies, and remember to pile onto the point as much as the enemies are, so get all of your melee tanky guys onto the point, and your DPS guys doing the damage there to stop the enemy actually capping any point of it, and that way you'll be able to prolong the war and hopefully mean that the enemy can't get on top of you too quickly, and give you a ton of time to be able to fight them off and basically win the war by defending that point there. Now, finally here, I just want to talk about fine-tuning your setup. So tip number 5 is going to actually be fine-tuning your weapon abilities, the weapons themselves that you're using, the food, and the attributes that you have on your character in order to be the best performance in the war that you can actually give. So what I mean by this is certain weapons are a lot better because they've got a lot more AoE damage, for example, or they've got better CC abilities where you can keep people stun locked for a longer amount of time, meaning that your DPS guys can get involved. Things like getting the aura heal if you're a healer and you've just done PvE expeditions, you might not necessarily need that, but if you're going to go into the wars, it's a must have. So it's kind of about re-speccing it into the specific points. One example of this again, fire staff, if you're going to be using things like flamethrower for PvE, it's really good in PvP, but you're going to want to make sure that you have meteor shower on so that you're getting that AoE damage. So all of those AoE, and for anyone that doesn't know, AoE is referring to area of effect, so those large area abilities, you're going to want as many of those on your team as physically possible, as this will allow your team to do a big range of DPS to a lot of players at once, and is very, very useful for these capture the point type objectives where everybody's going to be piling onto either A, B, or C flag, or indeed the fort flag when you get there, and you can do a ton of damage over time to those people. Now again, along with this weapon abilities and weapons, you're also going to want to make sure that your armor and equipment are fine-tuned for this. So it's going to be getting your company members and people who are in the war with you the best gear that you've possibly got spare. If you've got all yourself fine-tuned, you're going to want things with constitution for the tanks, maybe a bit of strength on there, making sure that your healers have got focus-based items. And this is really going to help you to get ahead, because if the enemy team don't have all of that, maybe you're all max level, it's a few months into the game, everybody's max level, but you've got the more fine-tuned gear, you're going to actually win that war because you're going to have better abilities. And it kind of puts in with those attribute points and the ability threshold here. So every 50 points in an attribute you get that special perk, and certain ones of those are really, really good for the wars. So you're going to want to make sure that you are fine-tuning those as well, so that you've got the perks that you require for the war. And that might mean completely respecking from your PvP open world build and your PvE build just for the sake of a war if you've got the resources to do so, because generally this will really help your team do a lot better. And again, gear can help push towards those 50-point zones. If you're a couple of points off, you get the right gear on, you'll be into that extra threshold and get that extra ability, which is always very useful. Now finally here, I just want to cover food. Food is going to be a pivotal thing that a lot of people forget about in this game, and it's really going to be good because, like I mentioned in my cooking guide, if you guys haven't seen it, there'll be a card on screen for you guys now, so you can go ahead and watch it after this video. And essentially there is food in this game which boosts certain stats, and in wars, things like extra 10 constitution, extra 10 strength, extra 10 intelligence, whatever it is, can really help you make the difference, particularly again if there's a lot of max level guys or a lot of people who have min-maxed on each team. And so the real difference is going to be those 10, 15 extra points you can pull in from gems, from gear, from food, and it's really, really going to give you the advantage. Make sure you've got some cooks in your company that can really supply this, because you're going to need a few each, because every time you die it does reset. So you're going to want around 10 to 15 of each food each, depending whichever stat you need, and really you're going to want to keep supplying this. So make sure you get some good cooks in those companies there to keep on top of all of this good stuff. Now finally, just quickly to mention before we do end the video here as well, is gems are going to be super important. So make sure you've got your gems fine-tuned, make sure everybody in your company is actually using gems on their equipment, because again, this can be a very pivotal factor in affecting the wage of the war and which way actually the war ends up going. Who wins, defense or attack, can all be down to the food, the gems and the gear that people have, rather than actually the PvP ability of skill. So bear that in mind. Try and get as fine-tuned as you possibly can. I know it's a lot of stuff to take in, a lot of stuff to fine-tune, and the first few months will probably be a bit more chilled than that because we don't have the time to get everything prepared. But a few months in, you're really going to want to knuckle down on those certain things and get them fine-tuned out. So hopefully you guys have found this video useful and informative. If you have, be sure to leave a like on the video down below, as it really does help me out. Let me know in the comments if you have any tips that I haven't mentioned here for the wars in New World, any PvP little nifty tricks, any overall war strategies. Leave them down below in the comments. It'd be great to have a conversation with some of you guys about those tips there. And other than that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please make sure you do so. We're pushing for 3k subs and we're uploading New World content every single day, so it would be great to have you here as part of the community. Go ahead and join the Discord if you'd like to join my company. We're going to be playing on EU Central when the game launches. We've got a few slots still open, so head over to the Discord, join in there if you'd like to be a part of that, or if you'd just like to be a part of my community there, you'd be most welcome to join and we'd love to have you. And other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching. Take care and peace.